The silent tension. What changes in the golden years? Once you cross 70, life's landscape can shift in unexpected, even uncomfortable ways, especially when it comes to marriage. For many women, those golden years bring more than wrinkles or aches. They bring complex realizations about the man beside them. Maybe you never imagined it, but some women find themselves simmering with frustration, even anger, toward their husbands after decades of marriage. Why does this happen? And what are the hidden triggers? By the end of this deep dive, you'll have practical steps, backed by voices of doctors, psychologists, and the lived experience of real seniors, to protect your health, your peace of mind, and your closest relationships. Comment yes if you want more insights that help you stay strong and self-assured after 70. Your input makes this conversation richer for everyone. You're not alone in these questions. First, let's anchor our discussion. According to Harvard Medical School and research in the Journal of Marriage and Family, major changes in marital satisfaction are strongly correlated with post-retirement adjustment, health declines, and evolving gender roles after 70 years old. The CDC's latest research highlights how these years are uniquely vulnerable for emotional upheaval, not just physical ailments. It's normal to feel worried or even ashamed about feeling distant from your spouse at this age. You're in very good company, and there are solutions. Today, we'll unravel 3 foundational reasons why resentment festers and what most husbands overlook. Through emotional neglect and invisible labor, the communication breakdown, and the myth of male change after retirement. Let's begin with the first, and arguably most under-discussed, teaching point: the burden of emotional neglect and invisible labor. Picture this. A woman, 72, wakes before dawn. She handles breakfast, medication reminders, doctor's appointments, grocery lists, and no one notices. Decades of partnership, and yet much of her work remains unseen, unthanked, unshared. It's like I became a shadow, one 76-year-old told a New York Times survey. Her husband, newly retired, expected her time and attention as if she were his personal secretary on call, rather than a partner who's also managing her own aging body and needs. This feeling of invisibility is not rare. Harvard Health highlights that emotional satisfaction for women in later life depends hugely on feeling acknowledged and appreciated. When appreciation disappears and nagging or silence replaces genuine gratitude, anger ferments quietly at the margins. Why does this so often strike after 70? 3 big reasons. First, retirement snaps whatever fragile balance existed before. Suddenly, couples spend far more time together in the same space. But that doesn't mean quality time. Often, husbands expect wives to fill their days, planning meals, activities, social invitations, without offering meaningful companionship or emotional reciprocity in return. Second, physical health deteriorates. Joint pain, hearing loss, medical appointments multiply, so the effort to keep up normal routines gets heavier for both partners. Yet often, wives feel their burdens increase as husbands grow less helpful. According to a Mayo Clinic review, women still perform the majority of household and health-related tasks, even in their 70s. Third, gender roles, shaped in the 1950s to 70s, die slow, painful deaths. Husbands may fail to see how much more support their wives need, emotionally and practically, after this age. What begins as frustration over dirty dishes or reminders about medication morphs, over time, into anger at feeling fundamentally unseen. Here's a story that crystallizes this invisible struggle. Jean, 74, married for 51 years, describes her routine as Groundhog Day with her husband Bill. He waits for me to start every conversation, plan the food, call the grandkids, you name it, she shares. Even after a health scare, when she was bedridden for weeks, Bill needed reminders just to pick up groceries. I felt like a ghost in my own house, Jean says. Her feelings grew from sadness to resentment, until she snapped. I didn't sign up to be his full-time nursemaid. This dynamic is not about not loving someone. It's about an unmet need for partnership, acknowledgement, and a shared sense of aging together, rather than alone, side by side, but emotionally worlds apart. So what's the actionable step if you're a wife, husband, or child watching this unfold in your own family? For men in particular, start with recognition. Take just 5 minutes each day to notice what your partner is shouldering. See her, thank her, and make a gesture to lighten her load, no matter how small. That tiny act builds trust and paves the way for rebuilding emotional connection. It's never too late, even if you've gone years without these conversations. Starting now signals you care and you're willing to grow alongside your partner. The communication breakdown. Words left unsaid, needs left unmet. The second pillar of why resentment brews is even more insidious. The slow, silent breakdown of meaningful communication. Why does talk dry up after 70? Why do so many long-married couples eat in silence or bicker over trivia, rather than sharing hopes or worries? The reasons are both ancient and profoundly modern. Decades together can build patterns, some healthy, some corrosive, where partners assume they know each other's every thought. What's left to talk about, some men may say. But this attitude is a trap. Research from UCLA's Longevity Center shows that couples who stop sharing new experiences or asking genuine questions about each other's feelings are far more likely to report unhappiness and even hate in the home. For many wives over 70, the loss of dialogue is a loss of self, especially when medical fears, financial worries, or grief go unvoiced. As Dr. Linda Waite, senior sociologist, puts it, it's not confrontation that kills these marriages, it's silence. Women want to feel heard, not just tolerated. Men, for their part, may withdraw due to embarrassment over health or finances, or because they've never seen vulnerability modeled by older men. But why do men so often misunderstand the impact of this silence? The answer lies in how male self-worth and identity change, or don't, after retirement. When work ends, many men feel adrift, and rather than leaning into emotional connection with their spouse, they withdraw. They may see talking about feelings as pointless or even threatening. Older women, however, crave reassurance, emotional warmth, and acknowledgement, especially after raising children, weathering illnesses, or burying friends. When those conversations don't happen, anger festers. The irony. Both sides often feel misunderstood, but for different reasons. Here's a real-world case. Delia, 78, explains how her husband Robert proudly completed every home repair project, but never once asked about her depression after her sister died. He thought I was just being quiet, she explains, but I felt abandoned, like my grief was a nuisance. Their arguments, when they happened, were never about the real pain, only about clutter or what was for dinner. The result? After 50 years, I felt lonelier than ever. So, how do you rebuild meaningful communication when habits of silence run so deep? First, use what psychologists call the question ritual. Each night at dinner, ask one sincere question about the past, the future, or an unspoken worry. Don't settle for, was your day good? Try, was there something that made you laugh or worry today? For men, it may feel awkward at first, but attempting vulnerability is more powerful than getting the words perfectly right. Second, agree on a weekly walk and talk without TV or phones. Choose even 10 minutes where both partners commit to airing hopes, fears, or just telling a funny story. The act of speaking, of being given space to talk, can be transformative, even if you have to start small. And if you're a husband, remember, listening, not fixing, is what most wives truly crave at this stage. The myth of male change, retirement, reinvention, and the missed opportunity. The third and final engine of late-life marital anger is what we call the myth of male change after retirement. Many women hope, secretly or openly, that their husbands will become softer, more involved, and emotionally available once careers end and the home front is shared territory. But for a startling number of older men, retirement brings confusion, rigidity, or emotional withdrawal, not the transformation wives imagined. Why? It's partly societal wiring. Men of the boomer and silent generations were raised to equate their value with external productivity, not emotional fluency. When work disappears, men search for identity, sometimes doubling down on old routines or controlling behavior as a buffer against their own vulnerability and fears of mortality. This dynamic becomes especially painful for wives, who, after decades of waiting for emotional growth, finally realize, often in their 70s, that the hoped-for change may never come. I thought when he stopped working, we'd do things together, travel, take a class, volunteer. Instead, he became more irritable, more demanding. I felt completely overlooked, shared Ruth, 81, in an AARP study. According to psychologists specializing in senior transitions, the inability or refusal of many men to adapt their emotional habits post-retirement leads women to feel emotionally widowed, even while their spouse is alive and present. But all is not lost, especially if you act sooner rather than later. For men, the most underrated act is to make a conscious effort to develop new interests, hobbies, friendships, volunteering outside of the marriage. Men who stay mentally and socially engaged outside the home bring back fresh energy, stories, and gratitude to their relationship, lifting the pressure off their wives to be everything. For women, it's just as vital to cultivate personal independence, separate interests, and new friendships so that anger does not become an all-consuming presence. When both partners take responsibility for their own joy, rather than expecting the other to be constantly available or to fix their feelings, marriages shift from simmering resentment to a cautiously optimistic new season. Here are 3 rapid-fire tips to protect against the downward spiral. Never skip your regular health checkups, especially mental health and hearing tests, since untreated issues can fuel frustration and misunderstandings. Try at least one brand new activity together each month, board games, museum trips, or online classes, to introduce novelty and excitement. When tempers flare, pause before responding. Physically remove yourself, even for a few minutes. Come back only when you feel calmer. This practice, recommended by the Mayo Clinic, breaks the cycle of reactive conflict. Above all, remember, small changes done daily add up, no matter your age. You are not powerless. Even if you've slipped into unhealthy patterns over years or decades, new habits can be forged, trust can be rekindled, and resentment can be replaced with curiosity, kindness, and growth. Common mistakes and myths abound. The biggest? That husbands can't change, or that late-life irritation is inevitable. The truth? According to the latest science, even small shifts in routine or conversation habits can have outsized effects on emotional satisfaction and physical health in couples over 70. Don't fall for the myth that memory loss explains away all marital strife, or that withdrawing into separate rooms is just what happens after 50 years. Here's what really happens. Marriages decline not because of major betrayals, but because resentment, neglect, and misunderstanding go unaddressed. So whether you are a woman plagued with unspoken anger toward your husband, a man bewildered by your spouse's distance, or an adult child watching tension mount between parents, remember, every positive step you take is proof that age is just a number, and growth is always possible. Share your story in the comments so others don't feel alone. This community gains power each time someone is honest about life after 70. Let's recap the essential tools to transform your senior years. Appreciation is the antidote to invisibility. Take time daily to see and thank your spouse for everything, big and small. Conversation, not confrontation, is your bridge out of resentment. Ask questions, share stories, and listen with patience. Personal independence and novelty restore excitement and connection. Pursue new interests and bring them back to your marriage as gifts. Like and subscribe if you value wisdom that supports your independence, vitality, and peace of mind. Download our free checklist in the description for daily practices that will revitalize your relationship and confidence at any age. Tap the next video for more proven tips on staying active, connected, and optimistic after 70. And don't forget, the pinned comment below is your resource hub. Join our senior community and keep the conversation going.